There we go. Okay. I assume
Here we
we
are.
are live. Well, we'd like to welcome you all to the Wheels Up Live podcast, episode 1. We will be focusing in this podcast on everything that matters to flight simmers and the flight sim community in a broader sense. And you might be asking yourselves, why? Did we need a podcast? There's plenty of other news sources. There's plenty of other opportunities to take in and absorb flight sim information. Well, I think that we thought one of the things that's really missing from our flight sim community today is some different perspectives.
Yep.
There are a few folks who provide live stream content, and they tend to do it mostly focused on particular products on a particular day, streaming, say, their favorite aircraft. And that's great. And I think those are wonderful opportunities. But we wanted to bring you an opportunity to get some unfiltered news and commentary from two people who are passionate about the flight sim community, passionate about flight sim products. And ultimately, one of our goals here is not only to give you perhaps some new perspectives and thoughts on the big issues in the community, but it's our plan as we go through this podcast to provide not only an opportunity for you to give us feedback, but we intend to bring on guests in future podcasts to talk about things that they're working on, experiences that they've had, and take that from a multi-dimensional perspective in terms of experiences, backgrounds, and communities. So that might include other users, other content creators, developers, and possibly even folks who are in the hardware business as we move along. So that's how we came to start this. And you'll see our format's going to be about an hour long. And every time that we get together here, which should be once a week, we'll also be including what we call sort of a feature section that will have one big topic that we're going to talk about. And in addition, we'll try to bring you what's happening in the industry just in the past week. And so that's how we got here. And in terms of who we are, hopefully some of you will already know us from some various discords or forums that you're involved with. I'm IAD bound. And as you can see, opposite me is Felix. And Felix, you want to tell everyone about yourself that they may not know?
Yeah, so I'm Felix. I've been in the flight sim community probably 20 years. I think the first time I got into flight sim, my mom bought me one of those little $20 Microsoft, I forget what they're called, it wasn't a force feedback stick, but a little cheap Microsoft $20 stick. Bought me a dual copy of Microsoft Combat Flight Simulator and Flight Simulator 98, and I just kind of went with it ever since. I've kind of been passive in the community as far as like being involved in the community and kind of the way that we're trying to do this now for 15 years, I would say. In the last 5 to 6 years, I've been a lot more active. I'm a mod on a couple of somewhat prominent flight sim developer communities, beta testing for a couple people. And so I kind of started this because I don't know if to see it, but technically as far as experience goes in the room with flight sim, I have a little bit more experience than IAD here. So I'll let you, IAD, talk about yourself and kind of how you got here and that sort of thing.
So I have discovered that I couldn't hear Felix.
Uh-oh.
So I think I'll need to figure out how to tweak that.
Yeah.
So I can. Okay. Well, so what I've done here is gone ahead and stuck something in my ear that hopefully will let me get some feedback from this. But just give me a moment and I'm going to try to tweak it. Gotcha. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get some of our news of the week started. so we can focus on some interesting items that are going on in and around the industry. So, obviously, one of the big ones this week is that on Friday, PMDG has published a picture in one of their threads of a landing gear of a 777.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Unknown.
right. So, as we know, this is a pretty exciting a bit of news. I can imagine that it has already sparked quite a bit of talk and interest. I think we've already seen it in
Yeah.
full swing. So let's take a look here.
It allows it so that it doesn't tail strike, right? But at the end of the day, this is a work in progress picture that means absolutely all things to all men, which I think you've intimated very well. It could be nothing. This could be work in progress. Maybe the 77300ER is the one we're coming out. The one that PMDG, is going to come out with first. Personally, I think some of the little hints we've gotten, we got that EFB shot where they showed the plan. It showed 77F, which is the freighter version of the aircraft. That kind of lends itself to the picture we're seeing here. You don't have the hydraulic ram. The engine that's behind it looks like a GE90. We can't tell what variant it is, but that kind of all lends itself to release it exactly how they released it for P3D and FSX, which is you had the 777 200 long range and the freighter. And those will be the first two offerings. To me, that's in line with what they're doing now, where they're releasing the not most popular variant of the aircraft first, fleshing out the issues that it may have. And of course, they're going to get sales anyway, because guess what? People want a long haul aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So it's going to sell regardless. I think some of the things I've seen that we've seen on the various virtual airlines, because ID and I are part of the same virtual airline, people not willing to use it because it's not exactly the 200 extended range. And I think that, I don't know, I guess that's kind of a state of the industry sort of thing, but I think that's a little ridiculous if you're going to limit your options in that capacity and not get it.
I put that in the cutting off your nose to spite your
Yeah,
face
despite your
category.
face.
Right.
Exactly,
And
right?
that's where I get flummoxed with folks because
Go Tomcat.
this is supposed to be a hobby to enjoy. I
Yes.
feel like when you're getting into those kinds of debates with yourself, you're taking the fun out of it for yourself
Yeah.
when you can enjoy these aircraft. And yes, if you happen to be doing a virtual walk around every time you're flying one of these things, which I don't think most people really do, maybe some do.
I don't have time for that. Who's got time
Right.
for that?
Well, I mean, there are people who do it, but that's fine. You may notice these little differences, but the fundamental differences in the cockpit are going to be nil.
They're going to be non-existent. I mean, there's
Right.
going to be carrier-specific radios or some variation, but on the 777, that started getting less and less. Versus like
Yeah.
the 747, some people have the auto brake on the glare shield panel. Or the EFIS panel. They have it on the pedestal. As the 777 kind of advanced, there's not really that many variations in how the
Right.
cockpit and how you, as the operator, the virtual operator, are going to interface with the cockpit in the sim.
Right. Well, it's like, to me, it's like the questions you see where people are talking about, what's the difference between this 737 variant that PMDG has, whether it's a 600, 700, 800, or 900. Answer in the cockpit, next to nothing.
Yeah.
Practical application in the sim, a few things, that you got to watch out for on a tail strike for a longer one or whatever. But for the most part.
Can I tell you, having talked to hopefully one of the guests that we can get on, who is a 737 type rated pilot,
yeah.
Operationally at their outfit, they do not change their technique of rotation,
right?
Because they operate multiple versions of it. Right. So exactly.
And I think I'm probably not unlike a number of users. I bought the 737-700 when it first released because why not? Yep. And then I bought the 800. I haven't bought the 600 or the 900.
You didn't buy the 900?
I did not.
I do a lot of Delta. I do a lot of United. That's their mainstay stuff.
I'm sure it's fine. And occasionally I think about buying it.
So the reason I do not to go down a rabbit hole. The reason I like the 900 is because it's crap. It has terrible it's
you really know how to sell it.
I like in the no. It's not crap. It's a very well. It's actually good that it's crap because in the real world, having talked to some people who've actually flown it, it climbs after flight level 250. It doesn't climb well. It doesn't do all the things. PMDG did a good job. But anyway, as far as this 777 goes, right? I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't want to get it because like you have something inherently wrong with PMDG. Okay, that's a different conversation to have.
Fine.
That's fine. If you're not getting it because it's not the exact variant that you want, I don't know. I don't think that I understand where people are coming from, and also there's a lot of other things that like the long range. You've got Emirates, you've got Delta, you've got Air Canada. They have plenty of routes for these aircraft. Okay. Sure. So I think there's a lot of things you can do in that space, and short and long routes, by the way. Not everything is this ultra long haul 15-hour. And then you have the freighter, which goes anywhere in the world, anywhere, any flight times from an hour to 16 hours.
Yeah.
They're going from Kansai all the way to Memphis, and then they're going from Memphis to maybe New York, or they're going to Memphis to Boston or something like same aircraft, by the way. Sure. And so it's just kind of one of those things that's like, there's so much to do. And that's, I think both of us agree, you don't understand why you're going to limit yourself in getting something.
And I remind people that for some of the airlines that actually have several variants, they might sub them out anytime.
Yep.
There's no 100% guarantee.
Can I tell you, I was supposed to take a 757 out of Atlanta a couple weeks ago when I was there. They subbed out for a 767-300, just came out of the maintenance shop. Actually, I talked to the dude who worked on it. Speaking of things to do, I talked to the dude that actually worked on it, and they just threw it in there and we flew it, and that's how that works, right? So,
all things PMDG, I see that this has taken up lots of time in our News of the Week segments. I'm just going to add a couple of things. So we've got a couple of new things. We have Sim Update 14 came out. If you look at the changelog, as always, they've actually made quite a lot of changes. Obviously, the big disappointment was we didn't get the AnyBuilds
Any
A320 in
Sobo.
this release, but okay. I think most of us will pick up our non-existent tiers and move on.
Yeah.
There was an update to the SR22 Tango
Yep.
that people seem
The
to be enjoying.
G6.
I've not
Yep.
tried it myself yet.
I
My
might
own
try that
experience.
actually.
Have you? Yeah.
No, I might try it.
You might try that.
Yeah, I might.
My own experience with Sim Update 14 is they're getting smoother and smoother and smoother with these
Yep,
updates,
they
which I
are.
appreciate. Another little teaser this week. There shouldn't be a lot of teasers this week. Was for mini
'Tis the
builds.
season for teasers.
Yeah, exactly. Was for mini builds. They're working on an A300 600, which of course they had
If you
in
didn't know.
right. If you didn't already know, they had it in X-Plane 12, which was
Yeah.
popular, and or X-Plane 11, now in X-Plane 12 as well.
So yeah, that's a consternation among our X-Plane brethren.
But it's there. They
It's
put
there.
out
It's
an X-Plane
100%
12,
there.
so everyone can relax.
Yeah.
So anyway, they did a little teaser. They showed some liveries. Here's just a sample of what. A to B A300-600 when it comes out. I don't know that there'll be a lot more to say about it, but
I mean, personally think that I've kind of heard some things. I think they're going to step up their simulation. I think that's kind of some of the things I saw. You didn't have the picture, but they're actually modeling the fueling panel, and there might be some other maintenance things that you may have to take care of. Like I said, I don't know. I just going off of what I saw in the pictures, but it looked like there was a little bit extra because they were really trying to highlight. They were like, "Oh, look at this feature," and so I think they might be trying to step up their game because obviously for their on the line is more towards like you said, A to B. We're getting in it, loading it up, we're flying it. There's not going to be failures, or you're not going to worry about that, but it's going to do what it needs to do. I think they're kind of trying to get into a new game. They've grown significantly, especially with MSFS, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
Talk about later, yeah.
I think obviously where I'm going to use this thing is the freighter.
Yeah.
Because for right now, it's the only real one without the 777. It's the only real freighter option we have for a lot of carriers in MSFS.
Yes, there are some 737 freighter options, of course, but yes, that's obviously a big one. And then this week we also had, I guess, a surprise update from Fly Tampa. They've updated Las Vegas to 2.0. It features scenery, and I think it's one of the best ones we have, to be honest.
Ye-
I've always liked it.
Yeah,
And
so it's funny, until I had my new computer, I could never fly in it, and then I was got the new PC, and I've flown um a lot into Vegas intentionally because I couldn't do it before. And also the Arnav Yankee 19 is just one of the better approaches in the United States that you can fly. You take that nice left-hander, you're right over the strip, you come in, you land. It's really nice. I like their scenery, and to be honest, Fly Tampa used to be a performance nightmare on P3D. It was a VRAM hog, and now I don't
still a
know
bit
what
of a hog.
it's
Yeah.
still a bit of a hog, but to be honest, it's I think this is more a testimony to MSFS and optimization in that sim. Maybe than more so than some of the devs' ability to optimize, but like it runs pretty well, I think.
I'll say this. We've talked about this before. Talking with Mir, who is the developer for all of the Flight Beam um, sceneries, he did say that optimization is a big part of his
Oh man,
workflow, and that it's
remember
super important, and that
you
there
had
is
it
sort
in
of a bit of a
P3D,
secret.
right? Remember those were the best sceneries. All the Flight Beam stuff,
At P3.
they run so well. They run
Well,
so well.
and the optimization point, just talking about the sim itself,
Mm,
there is no question that MSFS is a whole nother level of
yes,
consistent performance. There are issues. Every sim's got issues.
sure.
We could talk about melted buildings, see things popping up
Yeah. I
when
hope
you're loading.
photogrammetry is the thing they fix, because with the cities, because it right now it forces me, like some of the big cities that I fly into, I have to have a pack for it, and that automatically creates a performance kind of dip.
Well, yeah. Although, if it's sort of more of an autogen situation, it might actually work out better than having photogrammetry on in some cases. But I was just noticing the other day, I put after Sim Update 14, I put DirectX 12 back on
Yeah,
just for kicks. I did the big DLSS update that everyone's been talking about, where you go and you download the latest version of DLSS and put it into your Microsoft Flight Simulator folder in the appropriate location. And I have it set. I just have TAA on, but I do have frame generation, and performance is outstanding. There's an occasional um, glitch, where you get a little tiny bit of freeze, but the actual frames are extremely consistent and
it's good to
very
hear.
high. And of course, we all know the sim looks great, blah blah blah. But
Hmm.
just in general, compared to a P3D or X Plane 12, the difference in performance is startling. I mean, I was flying Phoenix the other day, and yes, I was at altitude, but with frame generation, I was comfortably in that 100 frames a second type of range, which of course, if you cut it in half, whatever, 55 frames or so per
Sure,
second, which is really good in a highly detailed aircraft inside the cockpit. I mean, as
yeah,
we all know, it's one of the major weaknesses in these other things. All right, well, I'll move us to our next big one. We got another teaser this week
yep.
of another aircraft where they chose to show us the landing gear, which I might say, I wonder if it's a coincidence that PMDG did the exact same thing.
months. And
Well,
so
correct
I
me if I'm
think,
wrong. Didn't they essentially say that they've already done the already released
and they might have in the
the
in
right the updates to their logic, but that
yes,
the final updates to the logic won't happen until they update the nav data format.
yes, yeah,
So
exactly, and they
effectively,
need
we've
to.
gotten half an LNAV,
Yeah.
LNAV 1.5.
Can I tell you that the PMDG does fly the legs well? As far as now in MSFS, they do fly. It flies a lot better.
Yeah, it's
But
fine.
as I said, I wish iFly Luck. If they come out first, I'll get them. Even if they don't, I might get it because I get a discount. We both get a discount,
Yeah,
by the way. I forget how
yeah.
much it is, but if it comes out, yeah,
Yay,
we
yay
both get.
discounts.
Yeah, we both get a discount
Right.
as previous owners. I think
Yeah.
they do a great. I think, like you said, it's a little performance heavy. I don't like how they did the HUD, but I think that's more a P3D thing
Yeah.
than it is a
An iPhone.
iFly or PMDG thing.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to do a good job, and I wish them all the best. And I know that if they do what they did in P3D, they're going to have no problem getting sales.
All right. Well, that we got one more news of the week item.
I'll be really quick.
Okay.
The
I'm just gonna
Avro
bring it up, and I think it speaks for itself.
you're not going to get it, but it's there for you, and I think they did a good job with it.
Well, I too am not. I just don't personally have a significant interest in military aircraft, so I tend not to buy those. But
I just have DCS for that.
yeah,
That's my
well,
thing.
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people do. A lot of
Hmm.
people do, as we know. Well, this brings us to our feature segment today. In the feature segment today, we thought since this is episode 1, we would talk about the state of the industry in general.
Yes.
And by the state of the industry, I think that there has been a lot of suggestions in the flight sim community from developers, some users, etc., that we are perhaps in quote unquote the golden age of flight sim. Now, but are we?
But are
And I
we?
think that there's a lot of elements that would make up a golden age, but
Sure.
I think, Felix, when I look at it, you have been a part of this community for what, 20 years?
About 20
About
years.
20 years.
Hmm.
You have far greater perspective on this than I do. And I thought that I would throw that out to you as the first thing to talk about.
So, do I personally think we are in the golden age of flight sims? I'm gonna say yes, and my yes is because we have for 10 years we had a stagnant, like we almost had a dying hobby. So pre August 2019, Asobo makes this world breaking announcement: we're going to have a brand new sim, we're going to return back to FSX glory. which by the way was another glory days of FSX. People, forget we had a lot of great add-ons. We had the 767 from Level D, which we still haven't had a great 767 in my opinion since then. We had all the PMDG products, which were that's when PMDG started to cement themselves as kind of like the standard of the industry there. And we had a lot of other great products that came out at that time. And for FSX kind of lapsed. Lockheed Martin, obviously, very famously bought basically the licensing for FSX code, and they created this thing called Prepared, which, looks, smells, and sounds like Microsoft Flight Simulator X, but you just don't call it that. And for about 10 years,
and don't have any fun.
And don't have any fun. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is commercial use only, right? And so, and for about 10 years or so, they went through 5 iterations, now 6, and they're kind of dying, but we'll get to that in a second. I think so. We had P3D V5, right? We have X-Plane 12. We have Microsoft Flight Simulator. This community has exploded. I'm talking about the amount of users that we have now. It's got to be, I don't have numbers on right in front of me. It's got to be at least of active users, people who have committed to this hobby. This is the primary thing they do when they're on their computers, video gaming, right? This is what they do. It's probably tripled, easily tripled. And for people like you, it's actually had some kind of back end effect of buying initially because they didn't have any long haul airliners. It actually boosted the sales of X-Plane, and it boosted the sales of P3D as well, because you didn't have the 777, you didn't have 787, you didn't have the 737 even, you didn't have any of these things. So you had to kind of retrograde to the previous sim. I think that there's a lot of space for development. I think the freeware community has exploded, and that's what I would call the golden age of sims, because back in the day, all this hobby was freeware. Like a lot of it was freeware. There weren't a lot of devs making a lot of things, and that's where Avsim came into its own, because it was all freeware, everything. You buy plane, you could literally download big planes and everything on there, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say that, yes, we're in a golden age of flight sim. Now, I think we'll talk about this later. I don't know if Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and now 2024's dominance is necessarily a good thing, but in the space of this hobby. But I do believe we're living in a golden age, and I think if people, I don't think P3D. I think P3D is kind of gone, but I think if X-Plane starts to kind of rally, I think they can kind of make a. I don't know if it's even complementary, but it would still drive the industry forward, and I don't think it would stagnate. And I still don't think that it's going to stagnate now. So,
yeah, I would agree that we're not at a point where I'd worry much about stagnation.
Yeah.
So you're right. I came to this the announcement in 2019 from Microsoft. I don't recall exactly how I became aware of it, but I know that I did. I remember seeing it and thinking, yeah, I'd like to try it again. And I say try it again because many, many years ago, I tried one of the Microsoft flight simulators. I'd be hard pressed to tell you which one it was. It was probably, I think there was a 98.
Yeah, 98.
I think it was 98 or somewhere around there, or maybe it was early, maybe it was 2000, maybe it was X. I don't recall. I tried a little bit. There, you couldn't find out how to do all this stuff in 5 seconds on the internet like you can now.
And maybe that's another
and
part
I
of
never really sort of got acclimated to it, even though I've always been interested in aviation. Always paid attention on what kind of plane am I on, stuff like that.
Sure.
I didn't do it. And when I saw this, I said, well, this looks like a wonderful opportunity to try this again. Just seeing those promo videos was pretty stunning. And then, of course, it came out. And I bought it. I bought a MSFS 2020, and I think we could all agree, on day one, it wasn't really ready for prime time.
But what sim is?
No, it's fair. But again, I wasn't judging it by any other sim in particular. So But, I mean, what did I try to do? Well, I tried some real basic stuff first, like let's get in a little plane and fly around. I tried a couple of the lessons. I did all that kind of stuff. And like a lot of people, I'm drawn to the planes that I was flying on as a passenger, right?
Sure.
And looking at those and then trying to learn how to do it. And I have to say, the amount of information that's available now really makes it easy to get started. You're not going to learn everything in depth or anything, but you can get started. And one of the things I discovered early on was, well, at least from my perspective, if I'm going to learn how to do something, I'd rather learn how to do it with something that's reasonably accurate, whatever. And as you say, that sort of led me to looking at X-Plane, led me to looking at P3D, which of course I sort of made the full rounds and have all of those now, as well as MSFS. Although I think like a lot of people, one of the things that I find myself doing is saying, when will we have this in MSFS? Because the truth
100%.
is that
Yeah.
I would rather fly in MSFS.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking any other simulator. I want to make that very clear. Just for me personally, I like the environment that you're in MSFS. I feel like a lot of the early criticisms have gone by the wayside. And I think when you look at, P3D, well, frankly, one of the worst things about P3D, besides the fact that I think we can all agree it doesn't look as good, whatever, is that performance is terrible. The performance is pitiful.
It is.
And
really is.
quite frankly, I find myself more and more frustrated with X-Plane 12 because honestly, again, performance is a big issue there. And I think that I just haven't found that transition. I have not found it to be as robust and resilient as it could be. And I think that the lack of developers jumping on 12 bandwagon, XP12 bandwagon, has also hurt it a little bit.
I do too.
And I think that I think Austin's a very interesting fellow who is still treating this kind of like a pet project. And that's hard to do when you've got the sort of behemoth that is Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it's pulled away some of those developers who had a lot of success just recently.
Any build
is the big example, main one, which actually brings me to a transition to a point about the industry, right? Which is that one of the things we are seeing is not only an explosion of freeware, look at FlightSim.to or the X-Plane Scenery Gateway, but we have also seen an explosion in payware. Yes. And some of the household names of yesteryear, PMDG, have made a transition, and they're in MSFS. And I think you can say, based on things that Robert Randazzo has said, they have had great success because they have managed to bring it to the PC and they managed to bring it to Xbox, which I think is an achievement in and of itself. You can argue about whether or not it's a little hobbled in Xbox or whatever, but I don't have a console. But when, issues like the liveries, like you got to pay for liveries, there aren't that many liveries, just little things that maybe made it a little harder in Xbox. And even he has said they've had some issues. But they've had a lot of success. Sales have been significant. I mean, they don't say what they are exactly, but I think we can surmise a couple of things. One,
he's got a Falcon. Let's.
Well, no, I mean, we don't know everything about how the Falcon came to be, so I don't want to speculate. What I would rather say is something that we do know, which is that recently he's talked about how they basically doubled the size of PMDG. Now, you might say, wow, doubled the size, but based on prior representations, they were running with about 8 people.
So 16.
So now they maybe have 16 people. Nevertheless, that's still double the amount of people, and
that's big for Flight Sim. Can I tell you?
And you're paying somebody, and it tells you that there is income. It tells you that there's potential income. It tells you that they're investing in things. I think that PMDG was probably long overdue for them in investing in some of these things. I think that when we talk about the golden age of flight simulating, I think that PMDG has made a successful transition to MSFS, but has sort of given up the innovation element to
Yes.
many others. So obvious ones that come to mind here, we have Phoenix that have done some very interesting things.
Yeah.
Yes, they built on top of ProSim, but in the end, they still did a lot of things that others had not
And now they're
done.
moving away from that as well.
Yeah.
So
But one of the other areas where I think we're really seeing some interesting innovation that are being done directly by folks that have sort of taken things that have been done before and moving it into a next level. So we've seen some interesting releases on the GA front.
yes.
FS Reborn just put out that M500. If you look at it, there's a lot of interesting integration that's gone on in it
Yep.
and things that it can do. And we have A2A bringing their new AccuSim product along with the Comanche. And again, it too has a number of interesting takes on tablets and maintenance. And of course, they've had that in other versions that they've done. But there's some very substantial work that's happening there. I think one of the things that has really marked MSFS out from others is a working title and what they've done
Yes.
with avionics, what they've done with the default long haulers. I think it's put them way in front of what P3D ever had on default and
100%.
what X-Plane has ever had on default in those categories. So I think we've seen some really interesting and fascinating developments. And one of the ones that I find particularly interesting is the new mega player in this market, AnyBuild. And I know that's something,
Yes.
Felix, that you have more of a feel for than I do in terms of kind of who they are and what they are. But I understand
Yep.
they're topping 50 or more people, or at least
They are
developers.
Yeah. It's a pretty big thing. I was on their Discord and I was just looking at, like, if you look at other Discords and then like the staff that's online and it's all theirs is green and it's like 20, 30 people. And I'm just like, this is something they are, and I caution to say this, they are likened to like an EA or an Ubisoft in this kind of industry. I don't think they are that. That's not their business model, but I think that kind of growth is what we're seeing in this industry with AnyBuilds, who, by the way, started out doing liveries and GSX profiles.
Right. For mostly P3D, right?
Yeah, for mostly P3D and X-Plane, and then they kind of ventured into the with the A300 in X-Plane 11. And then they got the same announcement we all got, 2019. They kind of saw the writing on the wall and they said, hey, we're gone. But I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing a Sobo in X-Plane to a lesser extent. We're seeing a Sobo partner with Working Title, partner with AnyBuilds to get a default sim that's good enough for a casual user to jump in and play around with it. Because for years, the third-party market was what built this hobby. If we did not have the third-party market, either freeware or payware, this hobby would be nothing. It would be less than nothing because the base sims were always garbage. Like, as far as they were.
No, I'm sure Austin would tell you he built the greatest
Listen, I literally just had
Cessna 172 ever.
I just had somebody who we both, at least I respect very highly, as a developer in X-Plane, who was like, if you owned X-Plane before 11.5, it was the user interface was just not good. And so
I did not own it before 11.5. So.
No, I know. And that's the whole point. It just wasn't good. And I didn't own X-Plane until I found out about the Fellas, by the way. So I'm actually very new to that scene.
Okay.
So less than 2 years in that scene, but the Fellas is fantastic, and that's my one shameless plug. Fantastic add-on. Go out and get it. But anyway,
well, we're all allowed a shameless plug.
Yeah.
And I'll say,
anyway,
for those who are watching, if you really want to challenge yourself to fly a plane that 3 people were flying, Fellas is your answer to that. Unless you want to try the Concorde,
which is FS Labs.
FS Labs.
Both of them are not in Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Correct.
We'd like to add.
Nor at this point can you even run the FS Labs without the crew assistance, nor would you want to.
Nor would you want to.
Yeah, unless you just want to watch your plane fall into the ocean.
So the any builds thing, I mean, you want to look at it as I think there's a lot. I think Asobo is trying to make a default for casuals. I don't think that they're trying to take away, because obviously they've heard the
Yeah.
outcry. I think we were talking about this, that the most requested feature for from the community to Asobo was the camera API for chase plane,
Yep.
because people really want that. I do too. I love chase plane. That
And
is the best
the
camera
fellow who
system.
makes X Camera would like to bring his product too.
Yes, exactly. And so that is the most requested feature, is the camera thing. And I think Asobo is addressing that. Okay. So I don't
Are
think
they?
that well,
Maybe for 2024. I don't know.
maybe
Something we'll see.
2024. You're right. Yeah. So anyway, I just think that any builds is kind of a is one of the success stories of the new golden age of flight sim,
Yeah.
if we can call it that. And I really think that they do have they listen. They really do. Like like the products they make. Yeah, the JFK, you could, if you had a NASA supercomputer, it would only run at like 15 FPS, but now it runs great. They've
Right.
optimized it. They've
Yeah.
listened. And that's the other thing too. By the way, these people are so big. They're not only doing add-ons for planes, they're doing sceneries, and they're doing high quality sceneries. They're doing
Oh yeah,
both
I like
Frontier.
theirs. Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that's like, is this the future? Are the Orbexes, or or a Contrail, or like an any builds? This is kind of the future we're going towards, right? And so now we get into kind of the add-on developers. So we have the old guard, we have FS Labs, right? They haven't brought anything over yet. When are they going to bring it over? It's kind of, it's
Now,
hey,
in fairness,
2027 is going to be a great year for
right, for
for flight
FSI.
sim.
I will say to that, and I think this is something we're going to talk about, is there's been
Mm.
two different theories about how to bring your products here,
Yeah.
in my view. One of them is, we have, given the large market and the kind of numbers that Jorg and Seb talked about back at Flight Sim Expo, is I've mentioned it before. They say they have something like 3 million users who they identify as sort of hardcore simmers. Now, it doesn't
Sure.
have to be Flight Sim alone. They weren't that specific, but I think you can go to read from that it was. They've got another 3 million users who are regular gamers as well. I presume that they're getting a lot of that from XPath, the XPass numbers or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they have another 6 million that they put into sort of the more casual users. But that is a very large number of people, way bigger than the kind of numbers that the industry has seen before. When you look at the Navigraph's annual surveys, you see that
there's another winner, by the way.
Yes, that should be coming soon. But you see how that dynamic has changed and where it's gone to MSFS and so on. But what we've now seen is we have kind of a lot of throwaway add-ons, sort of
Yep.
low budget add-ons that are meh. They're readily available in the marketplace, which is nice. I personally don't buy much there, but if you're looking for localized pricing, it's super critical to have that marketplace.
Yes.
And then we have some, more name brand developers who are taking a little bit different approach. One of them is TFDI, with their MD-11.
Yes.
And there they went with a pre-sale model, which they got quite a bit of criticism for, although I think perhaps some of that's a tad unwarranted. You and I both bought the collector's edition. And I think that right now, I think we all accepted this with TFDI, but to a greater or lesser degree with a lot of other developers, one of the most common complaints is, why am I your beta tester?
Yes. Why am I the guinea pig? Yeah.
What's it?
No, why am I the guinea pig?
Yes. Why am I your beta tester? Why am I the guinea pig? And obviously, with the ease of being able to update software these days and that kind of thing, there's a strong incentive to get your product to market, even if it's not quite fully baked. And I think that, obviously the MD-11 has caught a lot of attention for that. But
week they're fixing bugs on this product. Are they the bugs I personally like? No. I wish they would work on the flight model because that's really important. But I think they're trying to get some of the easier things out of the way so that when it comes to working on the flight model, they can just, that's what they can hammer on. They can just hammer, get it right. When it's ready for public release, we're all good to go. Bam, we're going to shoot it out the door. Everybody from the public is going to have a really, really good kind of impression of the aircraft. Fingers crossed. Yeah, I don't want them to fail. I mean, A, I paid $80 for them not to fail and to give my input. And two, I don't want to see these, because the MD-11 is really, it's a special aircraft. It deserves the care. It's rare. It's kind of like, it's not a unicorn in our community, but it's very much a very lauded aircraft. And they have a very, very kind of tough thing to live up to the PMDG MD-11, which I owned, which was a fantastic add-on from yesteryear. But we contrast that, this early access model. We see this now, right? We see these early access aircraft where they're releasing them, quote unquote, half-baked or incomplete, having us get our hands on it, versus somebody like PMDG, who will release something when it's ready. And also, it will do 99% of what it's supposed to do on day one. Of course, there's always bugs. When you release something public, there's always going to be some use case or edge case where, somebody has like a whole file organization structure that doesn't allow the weather to work or something like that, something crazy that they're going to have to discover. And that's just how that works. And, I've obviously been told from people who actually are developers for software, various industries, that's why you don't ever release on a Friday. And stuff like that. And so it's just one of those things that which one's better. I personally, having been on both sides of this and also, doing the little beta testing that I do for some of the developers, is that I am very much in the camp of, I think we should be waiting for these things to reach maturity before even releasing them. However, that is not how the industry is trending. In fact, the standard is going to be what TFDI is doing now. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of that.
Well, I think you may be right. I think we may see a situation where there are competing approaches and theories. I think we're going to see a lot more or sort of early release products for a lot of different reasons. And one of them I think that is kind of important, frankly, is that I think that there historically, for some of the other sims, and certainly before software distribution was not physical, because we've had non-physical distribution for a number of years, but there's a long stretch where physical was still the main way to do it. You pretty much had to nail it. On the first go.
Nail it on the first
and I think that we're in a situation now where there are still some developers who are kind of in that camp. Even though they're going to distribute it digitally, they want to be in the, as you say, 99% ready to go on day one. I think PMDG is largely in that camp, although one of the things that they have not done is, the thing that they release works fine, but the features they promise are not complete.
Yes.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
And one that I think we'll save for another date. But folks like FSL and A2A, I'll put them in the same category with this. They really don't want to release something that they don't think is complete.
Like, look how long we waited for Concorde. We were getting an update for years.
Look how long you waited for Sharklets.
Yes, Sharklets, the EFB.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and which, by the way, I know you and I agree on this. For everyone who loves an EFB in Microsoft Flight Simulator and talks about how, Phoenix is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Sorry, FSL did it better. But that's a whole other story. Yeah. I will say, for some of the GA aircraft, though, there's some really great tablets, actually.
There are.
Super fun to use and make it very interactive. Take a look at that A2A engine analyzer in the Comanche for one example. But anyway, my only point there being two different philosophies. The problem with the one about sort of putting everything out when it's 100% done or 99% done mostly is that Um, the market dynamic is hard to figure out. I don't understand the market dynamic 100%. I don't think any of the users really truly do. I think you have to be on the sales, on the developer side, or working with somebody like Mike, Asobo with the marketplace to
Sure.
really get a feel for that. But the revenue opportunities appear to be significant,
Oh, yes.
very significant. And I would think that any of these delays have got to be painful to you as a
Yeah.
developer
Yeah.
because, you know,
There might be a dollar amount because there will be
right?
users that may
You
be
want to
like,
get paid. Time's
yeah,
money
yeah. And
in
we
that
also
instance.
have the factor of, and I think this is what happened with TFDI. You have a small contingent of people who are shouting very loudly, like, we want it, we want it, we want it, come what may.
Yeah.
And it may not be ready, but then the developer, squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of situation, it relents
Sometimes, yes.
sometimes, in PMDG, it's like, well, we don't really, this is what we're going to do. FSL is probably to a greater extent, Majestic. We know that they're coming. We
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
seen
Majestic.
anything. We haven't seen anything on the
Right.
old Q400.
Right. Someday, somehow, some way, maybe.
Yeah, like I said, 2027 is going to be a great year for Flight Sim.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Felix, we're coming up on our hour.
We are.
And I think we've covered quite a bit of our state of the industry. Although, as I'm sure any of you who are watching know, we could go on
Forever.
for many, many hours on the state of the flight sim industry. There was just so much happening in this business that is so
Yep.
interesting, so fun, and I think we're all sort of lucky to be here and see it, despite the level of general complaining that we see amongst our peers. But I guess complaining is all part of the fun, maybe,
Yes.
sort of, kind of.
It's been a part. I'll tell you, it's been a part of this industry forever. It's
and every other industry,
and
honestly.
every other sim community hobby. You get passionate people with staunch opinions, and that's just how it's going to go. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you very
We
much.
hope we'll talk to you, see you all next week. Hopefully, some of you will come with along and catch up on this episode and ask us more questions, hopefully in chat. And we thank you. And
Thank you very much, and we'll see
see
you
you
next
next
time.
week on Wheels Up Live.